Oh, same.
Dr. Kigondu, you can hear me? Are you around? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Loud and clear.
Yes. I'm around.
Okay, sorry. So I would like to possibly introduce the team even as we await people to join in, and as we ask our people to join in so that you don't keep those who've joined in waiting. This talk is part of our series that we want to introduce again in KMA, and hopefully in future we shall also have physical meetings on what we are calling Financial Fridays, basically to empower our doctors to be able to actually make better financial decision, know where to access capital, and know what are some of the options in terms of financing that are there. So today we are privileged to be joined by the Inm Bank team, who will be making a presentation on medical equipment financing, various options. It's a critical talk because having had a conversation with them, we realize there are so many products out there that doctors might not be aware. Without further ado, I will hand over to Heloise Nyaga, who will introduce the rest of her team and go ahead and do the presentation. Karibu, Heloise. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
You are. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elios Nyaga. I am a relationship manager with Inm Bank in institutional banking. And joining me today from Inm, I have Enodias Wakiwa, who is our general manager, personal banking and business banking. I'm also joined by Caroline Molandi, senior manager, our trade finance. I'm also joined by Irene Muruga, head of institutional banking, and we are expecting one more person to join us, head of asset financing. And that's my team. Dr. Reed, we start, we continue waiting for...
I think because this content is being recorded, I believe the presentation can start. Should any of our members want the first part of the presentation, for sure we shall avail it to them through our various social media platforms, including YouTube and Facebook and our website. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll share my screen. And to begin us off is Enodias, who will be taking us through a brief on who Inm Bank is, and then I'll proceed from there. So allow me to share my screen.
So thank you, Alois, and thank you to our esteemed hosts, KMA. Good afternoon, and thank you for hosting us today. And to my colleagues from Inm Bank, good afternoon, and thank you for joining in. I think as already introduced, my name is Enodias Wakiwa. I'm a general manager in charge of personal and business banking in Inm. Today, we basically are going to spend some time talking to you about our medical equipment finance product. So on behalf of Inm Bank, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to interact with you and showcase our medical equipment finance product. We don't take this opportunity for granted, and we look forward to a sustainable and mutually beneficial relationship going forward. So to start us off, I'll just briefly take you through who we are as Inm Bank. And then after that, my colleague Caroline will take you through the details of the product, assisted by Caroline. And then at the end, we might have a Q&A session where you may ask us whatever questions you want, clarifications in terms of the product and any other financing solutions that we could have as Inm. So Inm was incorporated in 1974 and converted to a fully fledged commercial bank in 1996. We've had strategic alliances and technical assistance from several DFIs. These are development financial institutions, which have led to improved governance standards, state-of-the-art systems, policies and procedures in the area of anti-money laundering and terrorist financing, environmental and social governance, as well as our risk management. CDC Group PLC, a development financial partner, wholly owned by the government of the United Kingdom, owns approximately 10.68% of Inm Holdings, the holding company of Inm Bank Limited. Inm Bank international correspondent banks include major international banks such as Bank One, Citibank, Commerce Bank, Deutsche Bank, AG, ICI Limited Mumbai, Mashreq Bank PLC, Standard Bank South Africa, and Standard Chartered Bank New York, just to mention a few. We are also a tier 1 bank, and we are listed on the local bourse, which is the local stock exchange. The bank has a countrywide network of 40 branches and about 56 ATMs, covering the 8 major cities or towns in Kenya. And customers also have access to approximately 4,000 ATMs across the country as part of the other shared networks that we have with other banks like Visa, MasterCard, CanSwitch. We also are sharing that network with the other partner banks that we have. As of September 2020, the bank's total assets were valued at in excess of 273 billion Kenya shillings, with shareholders' equity approximately 48 billion. Profit before tax as at September 2020 was at 6.1 billion, and customer deposits 210 billion, as well as loans and advances at 147 billion. So that's in brief who we are. In terms of our aspiration as a bank, we aspire to become Kenya's leading financial partner for growth. But as a group, we actually aspire to be the leading financial partner for growth in Eastern Africa. Eastern Africa, you can talk about all the countries on the eastern side of Africa. We aspire to be a leading financial partner in that whole area. In terms of our vision, our vision is to become a company where the best people want to work, the first choice where customers want to do business, and where shareholders are happy with their investment. And in terms of our mission and purpose, is to become partners for growth for all our stakeholders by meeting our customers' expectations, motivating and developing every employee, and enhancing shareholder value. So in brief, that's who we are as Inm, but that was just to give you some perspective. But the main agenda item of today is basically where we take you through our medical equipment finance product, which we strongly believe will be mutually beneficial to you as an association, your membership, and everybody in your ecosystem. So without further ado, I will allow my colleague Eloise to take us through the slides which talk through the product that we have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Enodius. Now, allow me to take you all through our medical equipment financing solution. This is a solution that the bank arrived at, and we launched in between 2018, 2019. And I remember Dr. Simon Kigondo was part of the attendees that attended the launch. We felt as a bank, we need doctors are key partners to the bank. And for the longest time, banks to say have shied away from financing, medical equipment financing, because of the specialized nature of the equipment. Unlike cars and other assets that you find banks funding, medical equipment financing are very specialized. And so in case of a default, then it becomes very hard for you to repossess, because then you won't find another person to sell it to. And also because of how they function. And so we realized we need to come up with a solution that will be able to assist doctors in this space. And so we finance a wide range of equipment: X-rays, dialysis machine, ultrasounds, MRI, CT scans, and in different areas: theater, ICU, so diagnostic centers, hospitals, wherever those equipment are needed, we are able to finance. And so we look at what are the major benefit of any doctor or any hospital or any diagnostic center partnering with the Inm Bank in this space. First, we'll have a dedicated relationship manager who understands, because this is an area we focused on. So we will have relationship managers who understands what the hospital does, what the doctors need. And so we'll be able to visit your clinic or your hospital and guide you through the process. Then we tailor a specific needs for you as doctors and hospitals, because we realized even if as I proceed, you see the terms of the medical equipment financing, but depending on different doctors and different hospitals, terms may tend to differ, because then it's not a shoe fit for everybody. And then we cover a wide range of equipment. And then because for this equipment, insurance is a requirement. In case doctors or hospitals do not have enough money for that at the beginning, then through we offer insurance premium financing to cater for that. And then in case you find money and you'd want to settle your loan in advance, then there's no early repayment penalties for that. So I'll proceed to the specific requirement of the financing solution. So key features: as a doctor, as a clinic, as an hospital, as a diagnostic center, you need to identify the supply. First, we have two sides to this. So you can choose to get your equipment locally, or you can choose to import. So I'll be covering where doctors want to buy the equipment locally. So you will first, as a doctor or as a person interested in purchasing the equipment, identify the supplier you want to deal with. So we'll deal with reputable suppliers, not limited, but just to mention Crown, G, Nairobi Enterprises, and many others. So, and eligibility, like I've said earlier, we have doctors, hospitals, nursing home, clinics, labs, and diagnostic center. The tenure for the loan is 48 months. Limit is up to 70%, although it can go up to 75, depending on a case-to-case basis. The primary requirement, collateral requirement, is the equipment itself. So we don't ask for additional security unless where need be. If you look there, there's a caveat: additional collateral may be required, because again, it depends on how the financials, if it's a registered entity, how the financials look like. If they are strong enough, or if we look at the doctor's statement and they're able to fully support that, then we don't ask for additional security. And then we normally require insurance for the equipment, and that one we normally offer discounted insurance cover through our partner company or our sister company, GA. And then the current prevailing rate, we are charging at 13% per annum with a processing fee of 2%. I'll finish, and then if there are any questions, the moderator can be taking them, and then I'll answer them towards in the question and answer session. And then this is the process flow. The first step is for the doctor to identify the equipment they want to purchase. And then through the identification, of course, the supplier will give you an invoice. And then you will proceed to the application, receipt of the application. You apply. At this stage, there are key requirements we need. So for doctors who are employed, we require a pay slip. Of course, we need other licenses, maybe from KMPDU and other bodies that license you to practice as a doctor. And then, of course, the pro forma invoice issued earlier. And then we'll go through our credit process approval. Once your paper is approved and you're agreeable to the terms, then we issue the letter of offer, and then you execute the same, and then we do the disbursement to the supplier. The disbursement, we don't issue hospitals or doctors directly. We pay the supplier of the equipment directly. Hope that's clear up to there. Now, I will invite my colleague from Trade Finance to look at the aspect where the doctors want to import the equipment and not buy the same locally. And after she's finished, it's important to appreciate that when the equipment finally get here, and you don't have money to pay for that importation, then when the loans convert, it will convert to an asset financing, and will follow this same process. However, the approval will have happened way before the importation, the importation begin. Let me invite my colleague, Carol, to take us through the importation bit of this process.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. It is a pleasure for me to join you today and to present what the bank has to offer to you. I'll just share my slide. Sorry, just a moment. Right, so as Eloise was mentioning, there are two ways you can purchase your equipment. You can purchase locally, but there's also the option of purchasing from offshore, from an international seller. Probably you identify a machine that you like or has better terms. And that is where international trade comes in. Now, the challenge with international trade is that the exporter or the supplier wants to be paid before he releases his machine. And on the importer side, he would like to get the machine and then make the payment. Now, because there is that gray area about who does what at what time, then international trade comes in. Now, our solution and what we propose is that we utilize our import finance facility. You can import your medical equipment and we will pay your supplier on maturity. And upon payment, we book this under your medical equipment finance facility. Sorry. Now, what is import finance? It's a specialized segment of trade finance that deals exclusively with the financing of imports. So there are many products that we can use under this product. We can talk about a letter of credit. We can talk about a bank guarantee and documentary collection. So as you're discussing with your supplier, these are some of the products you'll probably mention. Now, one of the products that we would like to use for importing the equipment is called a letter of credit. Now, basically, a letter of credit is an undertaking by a bank to the supplier, confirming that if certain terms and conditions are met, the supplier is guaranteed payment by the bank. So this now allows the supplier to be more comfortable to release his machine in the hope or with the understanding that he's going to get paid at a future date. Now, what benefit does a letter of credit have for the importer, for you as the buyer? One, it gives you proof of creditworthiness because this is now the international market. The supplier probably has not dealt with you before. But if a bank steps in, there is now more creditworthiness that is now attached to you. The supplier is more comfortable releasing his equipment before he's guaranteed of payment. Secondly, you get better bargaining power because now you've moved away from having to pay upfront for the machine. You're able to negotiate with the supplier for better terms, for better, you can get a lower value for the equipment. Additionally, you get to have timely shipments because one of the conditions of the letter of credit is that the machine has to be shipped by a particular time. So it's easy for you to plan yourself. Probably you're starting up a facility and you require that machine to be here well before that time. So we are able to indicate that time in the letter of credit. For the supplier, the advantages include being able to reach new customers because if they stick to being paid in advance for the machine, naturally the exposure to new customers is going to be reduced. Secondly, they also increase export coverage because now they're able to reach more countries using a letter of credit. It also mitigates the default risk of the importer buyer because what happens is when the bank issues a letter of credit, essentially they are sort of like the buyer of the machine. And so the risk of payment moves from you as the buyer and comes to the bank as the issuing bank. A final, a last benefit that the supplier will enjoy is that he's able to discount. And what is discounting? If, for example, you are the supplier, say you sell some equipment, or you sell some goods to a buyer, and the buyer tells you, I am going to pay you after 90 days. And because probably you want to have the business, you accept. But now you don't want to wait for the 90 days before you can get the money. So you approach a bank and you ask the bank to purchase that liability, meaning they pay you upfront and wait for the 90 days to end and then make the payment. So that is what we call discounting. And that is one of the propositions we are making under this facility. What we are saying is that we want to pay the seller immediately he ships his goods and presents the documents to us, but at the same time give you a period up to 2 years before we are required to pay. And when the end of the period comes in, what we call the maturity date, we make the payment and book that payment under your medical equipment finance. So looking at it, you have up to 6 years. You have the 2 years before you make the payment is required, and then you have the 4 years that you're going to be given the medical equipment facility. Now, a letter of credit has 3 basic steps. I'll just take you through the 3 steps so that you get an understanding of how the product works. The underlying factor in a letter of credit, what starts it first is a commercial contract between yourself as a buyer and your supplier as the exporter, who in a letter of credit is called a beneficiary. So once you agree on the contract, you have agreed on whatever item are you purchasing and what is the value and when are you required to pay. You now come to the bank and you'll go through the process as highlighted by Eloise initially. So we'll have a credit approval process. And then once it's approved, at the point where in a local purchase, the disbursement is made to the supplier, we will now issue a letter of credit to the supplier. Basically, it's like we are making the order to the supplier. Once he gets a letter of credit, we are going to issue the letter of credit directly to the supplier. But now imagine this supplier is in UK. We cannot go directly to the supplier. So we have to look for a bank in the UK that is familiar to him, and that bank will go to the supplier and tell him that we have received this order from Inm Bank Limited. And we know Inm Bank Limited. So again, there's a matter of the payment risk. So the advising bank sort of gives the exporter that comfort that this is actually a real bank and this is a real order. So that is the first step. That is the first step in an LC. So once he gets the LC, the exporter now understands that he now has an active order and now commences to either manufacture or procure the machine and to ship it. So this is the second step. It starts off with the supplier shipping the goods. Once he puts the goods in a plane or a ship, he prepares the documents and presents them to the bank that advised him of the LC. These documents are proof that the machine has actually been shipped. Because you as the applicant, you want to be sure that there is actually a shipment that has been done. And as a bank, under a letter of credit, we don't deal primarily with the equipment. We deal with the documents that show proof that the equipment has been supplied. So once these documents are submitted to the bank in UK, the UK bank will check those documents and send them to us as the issuing bank. We will receive them. Again, we will check them and we release to you as the buyer. So using those documents, you're now able to go to the port. You're able to go to the airport and procure and get your machine. At that same time, where we are talking about discounting, at this particular point, once the bank receives the document, that is the UK bank, the exporter has the option of asking the bank to discount the bill, meaning pay me in advance, then come maturity, you will claim from Inm Bank. So the last step is the payment. So what happens, come maturity date, we will book a loan under your name and make the payment to the UK bank. And the UK bank will either pay the beneficiary if they did not discount, or if they discounted, they will now receive the money and knock off the outstanding amount in their books. I hope it's basically how a letter of credit works. So you see the advantage here is that you as a buyer have gotten a longer period before you're required to pay. The supplier on his side, he has supplied the machine with the faith that he's going to be paid. And at the end of the period, he actually gets his payment. So everybody is happy. Now, in terms of trade finance and Inm Bank, we have a lot of strengths. For one, we have a regional presence in the countries mentioned there. We also have quick turnaround times because an LC to a supplier is the order. So the faster he gets his order, the faster he's able to get working on sending the machine to you. So it's very important that he gets his LC as fast as he can and starts the process. Otherwise, he will come back later and say, you know, there was a delay in getting my order, so you have to extend the dates. Then that comes again and messes you up in terms of your timeline. Another issue, another strength that we do have is that we have a wide correspondent bank network, meaning that we are able to reach countries very far away. You'll recall in my example, I talked about Supplier in the UK. For us to be able to use a bank in the UK to advise the supplier, we need to have a correspondent. We need to have a bank with whom we have a relationship with. Because remember, the correspondent bank is telling the supplier that I know Inm Bank and I know that they're going to pay you. So we have these correspondent banks in various areas across the world. So we are able to reach any supplier that you get from anywhere in the world. Another strength that we do have is that we are registered as an issuing bank under a program called IFC GTFP. This is a global trade finance program that is supported by International Finance Corporation. This means that we are able to reach new markets because even where Kenya is not known, or even where the Kenyan risk is too high for banks there to accept, IFC comes in and fills in that gap. But they only do that for pre-approved banks, and Inm is fortunate to be one of the few banks in the program. So as well as reaching new markets, we are able to extend credit periods of up to 2 years. So you're able to get your machine and payment will be required after 2 years. If this were not the case, you would have a maximum of probably 6 months. So this is again an advantage for us as well as yourselves as the buyer. Another key strength we feel that we have is that we are able to engage both you as a buyer and your supplier, because we understand that trade finance and letters of credit are not your core business. You really don't want to understand the nitty-gritty of a letter of credit. So that is where we step in and we provide the expertise that is required. And where you require us to step in and speak to your supplier, to your exporter, we will come in and we will speak to the exporter and explore options which are favorable to both of you. Now, this only helps in making the LC process and the LC ordering much faster. And that's it from Inm Trade Finance. Probably we can have the Q&A. Eloise?
Right, thank you. Thanks, Carol. I think while we have the Q&A, I think it's important to highlight that this is a product that we developed with people like all of you on this call in mind. You need to get medical equipment, be it locally or be it you want to import. So we've structured a product where you can do both, and we are available to offer the necessary support. So this is an opportunity for you to talk to us and engage us and understand a bit more on that as part of the Q&A session. So Eloise, you need the Q&A session, right?
All right, thank you, Anodius. Allow me to share my screen again. Through our interactions with doctors, we've come up with the questions that tend to be asked frequently. So we'll look at that first. And then And then I hope my host is taking other questions from the doctors that we're able to address once we finish that.
So thank you very much, and I'll request for those who are logged in here, if you want to ask your question, can you just put it in the Q&A area? And already I am seeing the certain questions which have been put up on the Q&A area. Maybe Dr. Kibondo, you can help me check out the questions, please.
We ask them now.
All right. Dr. Let me first go through the most commonly asked questions, and then we can take what the doctors are asking now. So the first one people will ask, will the bank source the supplier, either locally or internationally? That is the responsibility of the buyer, because being a doctor or being an hospital, then you know what exactly you need for your practice, and actually in more detail. So it's your responsibility to identify where you want to buy your equipment from and the specifications of that particular equipment. And then is there a minimum acceptable value that can be financed? There is no minimum. I don't know what's the most expensive machine, but I know for an MRI, we are looking at 100 million, a CT roughly 30 to 50 million. That is an amount you're able to finance. And then what is the pricing? For the LC, it will range between 0.25 and 8%, especially for the 8% for the 2-year LC. And then upon conversion to asset financing, then we charge 13% with a processing fee of 2%. How long does it take? Normally, it takes 3 weeks, but again, it's solely dependent on you as the buyer, because at times during the invoices take long to come through. And if it's a company or if it's an individual doctor, at times the documentation takes time to come. But if we receive everything from the onset, then the maximum period should be 3 weeks. And then we look at, should the bank, this is a very common one in the area of LC, should the bank bear the charges related to the letter of LC? It will depend with the agreement that you have between you and your exporter on who to bear the charges. And I've seen from the ones that we've done, there's an agreement where the supplier will load everything to you, and there are others where you both share. So it depends with the agreement you have with your supplier. And then why should I opt for a letter of purchase for the equipment? I think this Carol has clearly covered it in a session. And then for importation, who will be responsible for clearing the goods? So this one, it will depend. You'll again agree with your exporter. And then if it is you, then you need to get a clearing agent locally to assist you with that. On question number 8 on documentation, this is very key. What is required for documentation? We need a full, this KYC means know your customer. So we require, if it's an individual, like I earlier said, your KRA PIN, your ID, your passport photo, your pay slip for 3 months, and then the relevant licenses for you to practice as a doctor. And of course, the invoice for the machine that you want to buy. And where it's a company, we'll need 3-year audited financials. And I've also seen a lot of doctors who are coming together to start up something new, but they are practicing or they're employed in different hospitals. We are not shunning away startups of that nature, because we can use their strength as individual doctor to be able to, if they're starting something new, so they might not have these audited financials, but we can look at their capabilities as individual doctors, and probably they should be able to guarantee the new outfit. And of course, the last one is the relevant registration by various bodies to make sure we are dealing with legit doctors, to make sure we are serving, this is going to the right people. I think that is what has commonly come up during our meetings. And now, Dr. Kigondo, maybe you can share what the doctors are asking, and I&M team then should be able to step in and we address those ones.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll start with the most interesting one. Would you finance other assets of doctors, such as gym equipment, restaurant equipment that are not medical?
We would, and I believe in the panel, we would. I think in the panel we have our head of asset financing. But
yeah, we would finance DOC, but not as part of this product. Yes. We obviously have an asset finance department that looks after those sort of equipment and machines and other assets that you may need to purchase. So we definitely have solutions to that, but it's not covered under this particular medical equipment finance product. But we do have as a bank. Is Timothy on the call? You can also chip in.
Thank you, Anodius. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, you can hear me? Hello?
You're audible. Continue.
We can hear you,
okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for responding, Anodius. And just in addition to what you put out, yes, of course, we can finance these other aspects of the assets that the doctors may require on day-to-day life. But as Anodius has put it out, they are not specifically covered under the special terms that have been put out on these medical equipment finance. We may want to perhaps engage, separately so that we appreciate the kind of terms that are projected under the general asset finance product. Perhaps excellent. I can follow up this with a bit of a brief, separately on what else can be covered under the general asset finance product.
That is fine. Daniel Wamai wants to know, is the LC termed out upon settlement?
Yes, it is termed out upon settlement. What happens, it is now converted into a medical equipment loan. But we say that the LC has been termed out, has expired upon payment to the supplier.
Okay, just for the sake of doctors, because some may not know what LC, just repeat for them what LC is.
An LC is an undertaking by a bank on behalf of a buyer to the supplier, requesting the supplier to provide certain goods or services that has been agreed with the buyer and to meet certain terms and conditions. And upon meeting those terms and conditions, the bank will pay the supplier. So that's an LC. It's short for a letter of credit.
Thank you. Thank you. You remember you're talking to doctors. How long is the term loan?
It's up to 48 months.
Very good. As you can see, doctors are very precise. Healthcare workers generally tend to be precise, for their questions. Is the term self-securing?
I think what I can say here, maybe I can take this one. It's basically secured by the asset that you are purchasing. So if you mean it in that sense, yes, it is self-securing in the sense that it is secured by the asset that we are purchasing. So if you are purchasing probably some dialysis machine or equipment, that particular dialysis equipment becomes the security for the transaction all the way through, because it will start as an LC, which will mature, because an LC is an irrevocable undertaking by us to say, supply Dr. So-and-so with this subject to these specifications and conditions, and on this date we will pay you. So that is done. And on that date, we as you said there, we actually term it up to 48 months. So that becomes a loan. That loan is secured by the equipment in most cases. On a few cases, we might ask for additional collateral. Obviously, it depends on your credit rating, your credit score, your performance, and so on. So that might call for us to ask for other things. But ideally, the equipment should be the one to secure the transaction.
What percentage of the asset will...
Right, as we had highlighted on the product features earlier, I think we have said up to 70% of the asset value is to be financed. The reason for that, I can see another question which is saying, why kept the financing to 70, 75? So I might as well take an opportunity to answer them both. We are saying we are financing 70%, and we would like, ideally, the doctor to contribute about 30%. That's just as a show of commitment. You demonstrate that you are committed to this equipment coming. You've got a market and a demand for that product you'll be offering to your customers. You've got definitely going to generate some cash flows out of it and be able to repay us. So as a doctor, you get into this, you are confident it will work out, and then you show your commitment through some 30% payment. But obviously, we take that very seriously. If you can't commit to it, then we probably think you are not sure as well. So we have got every reason to be worried. But usually when you are confident, you commit. But when you cannot commit 30%, obviously there will be always room for discussions in terms of how much can you commit and why, and we look at it in that space. But as a product, on the features, we are giving up to 70%, and 30% comes from the owner's contribution.
What do you do for a startup?
What support do you have for a startup? That's a good question. We've basically not been financing startups, but obviously there would be a reason for us to have a look at the startup and look at what are the merits, what are the strengths. It can be a startup with a lot of potential based on the facts on the table. So we can look at it, but as a product, we did not design it for startups. We designed it for people who are already in business and who already have a market and who already have a demand and who've kind of established themselves. But we can look at, because you can be a doctor who's actually employed by somebody, but you apart from being employed by maybe Aga Khan Hospital, you want to start to set up your equipment for dialysis, for example, and you outsource it, you hire it, people come and you get the service and you get the cash flows. You can do that based on your payslip and other sources of repayment, and we can actually finance that. So that becomes a startup in the sense that you are starting a business, but fresh from startup perspective, we can look at that, but we obviously critically look at startups because of the risks involved in terms of the person has not done it before, there's no track record. Are we really sure they will be successful? So there's a bit of concerns there. But where somebody has done it and we are confident they can do it, you find that the decision is much easier for us as a financier. But we can look at that depending on the circumstances at hand.
You have
I didn't get that one.
Do you have an unsecured working capital facility?
I'm not, I think it's a bit faint, doctor. Is it just me or everybody else is having the same problem?
Do you have an unsecured working capital facility?
Okay, yeah. We on this particular product, no, but as a bank, we do have micro and small enterprises sub-segment or department that looks at micro and small enterprises. And we are actually developing a product for that, which will typically be working capital financing, which in most cases will be cash flow based and typically not secured. We haven't launched it as yet, but it's something we are working on. It will basically be a cash flow based working capital product, which will largely be unsecured because we will be relying on the cash flows.
Do you need to have an account with that bank to benefit?
In this particular product, yes, I think Eloise and team can help me here. I think it will be very important for us at the start of the relationship to have at least an operative account with us, so that whether it's payments, it's receipts, it's repayments, they all happen through that account. So it's a requirement for us to have an account with you for us to get into this transaction.
Additionally, just to clarify, on the issue of the account, we do not require you to have previous banking experience with INM. The relationship starts at this point, but going forward, definitely, like Enodias has put it, it will be a bit tidier and better administration if you're able to open the account and, of course, have it as a servicing account.
Just to add on that, at the onset of the application, of course, if you don't bank with us, what we will require six months to 1 year bank statement, because I believe before you come to Indem, you've been operating other accounts elsewhere. So we will review your account statement from other banks or for a minimum of 6, a maximum of 1 year. Then that will dictate the approval of the credit process. However, if it's approved, then at that point, like my colleagues have said, we expect you then to have a running account with Indem, where the whole transaction will go through and repayment and consecutive banking.
Thank you. And finally, the Kenya Medical Association is having an annual scientific conference and AGM in Kisii, April 21st, 24th, around there. And the convener of the Young Doctors Network, Dr. Linda Kemunto, he has congratulated this session for being an amazing session. And it's good to know that there are financing options for healthcare through INM. And she has extended a request asking whether you could be available for the KMA pre-conference on 21st of April, because there is a session on entrepreneurship, and the details will follow. And I think you can liaise with her on marking that day in your calendar. It's usually the day before the main conference, where we get a lot of young people, a lot of people doing medical business coming in, and she would be very happy to have one of your sessions. I think you can discuss with her on the side on the details of the same and how INM can partner with Kenya Medical Association for the same. With that, I want to ask the INM team to make probably parting shots on this issue. It's definitely not the last one. It's not the last one. And we'll continue engaging. And as you can see, you've already secured an invitation to the conference from the Young Doctors Network. As you make your parting shot, and after that, the CEO of Kenya Medical Association, who is the organizer of all this, Dr. Liz Kitao, will close for us the session. Who do we start with? Caroline or Eloise? Who do we start with?
I can start. So first of all, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to speak to you and to provide whatever solutions we can. And we also request for you to engage us further. We'll be happy to meet you, each of you directly, to discuss this further. So far, we have done this for a couple of clients. I'm talking about the import side, and they're very happy. So I think this is something that will be of great benefit to you doctors. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much to the INM team and also to the KMA National Secretariat team, Edith and Peter, for actually arranging this webinar. Initially, we wanted to have it at 7 p.m., but we had another engagement, and having postponed for 1 week, we thought we didn't want to postpone again. So we're hoping to host you some other day on request of members, so that you can have bigger participation. Number 2 is that should you need, for the participants, should you need CPD accreditation for the same, Peter will be able to share with the email that you registered. And should you wish for Inm Bank to contact you, kindly leave your contact on the chat area before you leave and before we lock the meeting, so that they can be able to get these email addresses and follow up with you directly. So thank you very much, and God bless you. And maybe to make clarification is that this webinar has been recorded and shall be available on our various social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Have a good afternoon.
All right.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much on behalf of the Inm team for affording us this opportunity. Like I said earlier, we look forward to a lengthy, sustainable, and mutually beneficial relationship with you at KMA. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One of the doctors have asked for your general terms there. I've seen Dr. Mary Nziani asked that you share your general asset finance terms to her.
Yes, Dr. We're going to share the general asset finance terms alongside what we call insurance premium finance, which is directly linked to the transaction on the equipment. I believe Eloise had sort of brushed over it, but we'll share the specific details so that everybody is clear. Thank you.
Very good. So if you also share with the Kenya Medical Association, we can take a look.
Okay.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you, Dr. Simon.
Thank you.